Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our next live stream. I'll be your producer for this session. Before we start, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional, and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenters to answer live. Our session is being recorded. It will be available to view on demand right here on the Reactor channel. With that, I'd love to turn it over to our speakers for today. Thank you for joining.
Hello, hello, hello. Hi, Gaston. How are you? I can hear you, Gaston.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay,
gotcha. How you doing, my friend?
Great to see you, Javier, in another session.
Nice to see you too. So here we are with this great session that we have ahead, the integration blueprint, choosing the right path in Microsoft Fabric. This is something that we had the pleasure to deliver live together back in Vienna in the FabCon, and a session in where we got a lot of engagement from the audience. And well, we decide and we propose this here for the Fabric Database for the monthly edition, just to deliver it here. Because again, we would like as many people to engage with us and with this presentation. So, Gaston, what do you think?
Again, yeah, this is a pleasure for sharing this session. We got great feedback in terms of what we are trying to land with this presentation. That is more the perspective of all the roles, all the personas coming together in Microsoft Fabric, how you can succeed to understand almost every single workload across Fabric. So I hope that everybody that joined this session live, on demand, doesn't matter, can check on the details on what we are going to be showing today, because those details are the ones that you need to take care and understand the whole perspective of how to build an end-to-end integration solution within Microsoft Fabric.
Yeah, so that is actually the best feedback we got, right? Just to deliver a presentation end to end, right? From the ingestion to the storage, the processing, the semantic model, and the Power BI, and some AI with Copilot. So why don't we start? A little bit about myself. My name is Javier Villegas. I am from Argentina. I work at Mediterranean Shipping Company. I'm been involved with the Microsoft data platform and specifically with SQL Server for 30 years now. I am Microsoft MVP in the data platform award area, and I'm also Microsoft certified trainer. And one of the local organizers of our own community here in LATAM, SQL Argentina, in where we have our meetups and events in person, online, and everything. You have my contact information on the left side of the screen, and you have the QR code at the top just to go directly to my LinkedIn account.
A little bit about myself, Gaston Cruz here. I'm from Uruguay, South America. I lived in the Seattle area. I moved here 7 years back. I'm playing the role of senior director in the consulting firm named Slalom. I'm a global Microsoft leader here, as well as Javier. We met each other in different community engagements a long time ago. I've been in the data platform space for quite some time. I'm also Microsoft MVP in the data space, also Microsoft MVP in the AI space, and I've been kind of sharing knowledge across different communities as a certified trainer and delivering sessions across this space. I also run the Microsoft Seattle Power BI group here, and I'm also a Microsoft certified Fabric Analytics Engineer Associate and former member of the Azure Data Community Council. I've been engaging with technical speaking for quite some time at Build, Ignite, FabCon, Vegas, FabCon, Atlanta. Hope to join the community in FabCon Barcelona as well. And it is pretty meaningful to share community. So if you're joining from any different country, any different city, please go to the Microsoft Fabric Global Community, sign up for the community, check what user group is available around your area. You can also join a lot of on-demand sessions here in YouTube. This session is going to be recorded, so I really strong advise everybody to join the community, share your knowledge, share your experience, and collect feedback all around, because that is pretty much the meaning of bringing your expertise, bringing your energy across communities.
Great. So now met our moderators, Heidi and Alpha. They are both here in the YouTube chat when you see this only live, right? So both of them will answer all your questions related to this presentation. So please engage within the chat and make sure that you participate. We would like to, get your questions and see if eventually we can answer some of them here live. And, also Heidi and Alpha will be able to answer as well. So definitely the right place to be here right now. So there is a new database event coming very, very, very soon. So please engage with us. Go to aka.ms/database or scan the QR code. So over there, you will get all the notification about the upcoming event. And as Gaston mentioned before, join the Fabric community, because over there, you're going to engage with other members that may be close to your area or online. So definitely those are the right place to be. All right, of course, we need your feedback, right? It's always good to get feedback from the community, from other professionals. So if you are new to Fabric or you know someone who is, or same for Power BI, make sure that you join the community and go to new to Fabric or Fabric user panel /live, and over there you will be able to both engage new persons into the technology and also provide feedback directly with Microsoft engineers and developers, so the people who actually create the product. And you will also have the chance to have some influence in the product roadmap, right? So Gaston, let's start with our presentation. So, most probably you have seen this, you are aware of this, but we have Microsoft Fabric as general availability since more than 2 years. Satya was on stage back in Ignite, and he presented this end-to-end data platform for the era of AI, right? This is actually, the one of the biggest announcements recently in the Microsoft data platform space, because Microsoft is definitely investing a lot into Fabric, right? Why we say so? Because of this, right? We have free training almost every week in different languages, different time zones, speaking about multiple topics on related to Fabric, and we have the possibility to speak directly with all of you on specific features and doing demos and doing this kind of session-based presentation. So we're gonna go through this presentation today, in where we will try to cover in 1 hour Fabric end-to-end, right? How to do a project from scratch from an empty, let's say, workspace. We're going to see what a workspace is in a second. And we're going to start doing our data analytics project. Right? It's interesting to mention that at the very beginning, Fabric was this data analytics projects for the era of AI, right? Now, Microsoft is trying to make it a global data platform solution, right? Also, in adding the possibility to have relational and non-relational databases within Fabric. We're going to see it later on. Also, during the same presentation, Arun Ulak, the CVP for Azure Data, present that phrase for the very first time. And I decided to take this picture and I use it as much as I can because this is quite real, especially nowadays, right? Data is the fuel that powers AI. So if there is no good data, the output that we will have in AI will definitely not going to make sense. So we, as the persons who work with the data platform behind the scenes, are the responsible to prepare all this data for this new era of AI, where we have to serve multiple profiles: data analysts, data engineering, data warehouse developers, real-time analytics engineers, etc., right? So for us, that we're gonna, go through this journey with Fabric, is our number one task, right? Make sure that the data that we have is ready to power the AI era. So we go to the first slide, and this is an overall picture of what we're gonna see in Fabric, right? And we have this concept of multiple profiles. I would like to say different hats in where within the platform, we can just switch our profile and do different things. We can create a relational warehouse, right, using T-SQL, but at the same time, we can do machine learning and work with Python and Spark using Notebook on a Lakehouse, right? Eventually, if we are working with real-time intelligence with events, we also have the possibility to switch the hat and start working with that kind of project within Fabric. The most important thing is that, as you may know, this is a SaaS solution, software as a service. So we don't have to install anything into our computers, right? Absolutely anything. Why is that? Because, it's software as a service. We don't have to install any ODBC driver, any application. I remember back in the day, Gaston, you probably do too, in where we had to set up an environment like this to start working on a proof of concept, and that take several months to build the environment, install the machines, the authentication with the Active Directory on the clusters, install the software at the top of it, and then being able to start just implementing the solution that we have in our project, right? Now I like this phrase from Microsoft, 5 minutes to set up, to 5 seconds to wow, right? So again, we're going to be able to connect to the portal super easily. And the most important thing, and actually a great thing, is that eventually, if you are new to it and you would like to try it, you can do it for free. Yes, for free. The very first time you connect, you can set up a 60-day trial period in where you can try everything, right? Do your project, do your proof of concept, and when you are ready and you validate the solution that you have created, right, then you can, move to a paid solution, right? But in order for you to start, you need nothing, right? Just to connect, authenticate, and boom, ready to start. And that is what we're going to be doing today, right? It's also important to mention that as Microsoft is introducing Copilot everywhere, is also available within Fabric. Why is that? Well, because we have the ability to use Copilot to help us in coding our T-SQL store procedures for the data warehouse, using DAX for the semantics model, also creating Python script if we work with notebooks. If we are creating a pipeline with Azure, with Data Factory within Fabric, we also have the possibility to rely on Copilot just with this side chart at on the screen, and just interacting with Fabric using natural language, and we can get great thing. Also, at the top of it, we can use Copilot with Power BI to generate visuals, or also to get insight from the data that we have prepared in Power BI. Also, we have an important component within Fabric, which is OneLake. Right? OneLake is the storage area in where we can store our lakehouses, our data warehouses, our databases, everything. The good part of it is that it's using an open format, a Delta format, so it's quite easy to interact with other systems. We will see it in action when we talk about multi-cloud shortcuts just in a minute, right? But the storage area within Fabric is OneLake. I always like to make this comparison with Microsoft 365 or Microsoft Office, in where we have multiple products like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and we have OneDrive, in where we save and we store the documents over there, and we share those documents within the application and also with others. Well, OneLake is the same concept within Fabric, right? We can be working on data warehouse or data engineering project in where we have a lakehouse, and we need to share that particular data set with another project. We don't need to duplicate the data. It's super easy. We can share it, and all this with OneLake, which today in our presentation will be key for what we're gonna see. I will say that this is, to me, one of the most important slides to start getting the introduction into what we're gonna be doing later on, which is the demo for all of you, right? The rectangle that we have at the center is Microsoft Fabric, in where we have the different type of workload, data factory, data engineering, data science, etc. Then the serverless compute, which is Spark, T-SQL, KQL, or analysis services, and as I briefly said earlier, OneLake. But then, the first thing we need to do when we start is do the ingestion into Fabric, into OneLake. And there are multiple ways of doing this, right? This is one of the big part of the demo that we'll be covering in a minute. But, I will say two of the ways to ingest data into Fabrics are quite unique, and, we wanted to highlight it on this slide. First of all, mirroring, right? What is mirroring? Well, basically, we have the ability to synchronize, to replicate, to mirror our operational data, right, into OneLake. So if we have, for example, Azure SQL Database, and we have our mission critical database, an application running at the top of Azure SQL DB, or Oracle eventually, right? And we want this data to be available in near real time within Fabric, so we can use that data to, with another data that we may have from different sources, and do analytics with real-time data, right? So with this technology, mirroring, we can connect to Azure Cosmos DB, Azure SQL DB, Managed Instance, SQL Server, Oracle, SAP, Snowflake. There are multiple engines that we can connect to and do this replication, synchronization in near real time. As you can see It's not only Microsoft technology. We can connect to any other databases, right? It could be relational, it could be non-relational, so anything. And that will help us to bring the data into OneLake kind of seamlessly, right? We will see it later on. Also, we have this concept of multi-cloud shortcut. What are those multi-cloud shortcuts? Actually, are quite powerful, right? We have the ability within Fabric to connect to an external cloud, to an external source, right? That could be an Amazon S3 bucket, Google file system, or even an Azure storage account, or including also Dataverse, right? And we can reference the data that is sitting on those locations without even copying the data into OneLake, right? We're going to make the reference, we're going to browse and see the data directly within Fabric, right? And then if we want, we can ingest those files, those, Parquet files, CSV file, whatever, into our lake and use it, for our project, right? So it's just a reference to external clouds to get the data. For example, we may have another system that, as an end result, generate files on the Amazon S3 bucket, right? And what we're going to do is just reference that bucket and get the data and ingest it directly into Fabric, super easy, right? So now we will go to the architecture of the project that we will be doing with Gaston today, right? We will cover data ingestion, transformation, and analytics, right? So this is the overall explanation before we jump to the demo. So we have Microsoft Fabric, right, with OneLake, and we have created an empty Lakehouse, right? This is just to start. So what we're going to do first is create one of these multi-cloud shortcuts to Amazon S3 and connect to and ingest the data that we will have in 2 files, right? That's the very first things we will do. Then we will use a pipeline to connect to an Azure SQL database. Over there, we have tables, in this case, the payment tables, and we will do a pipeline, an ETL, to get the data into the Lakehouse as well. Then we will have data sitting on-premise in our virtual machine on physical files on our C drive, right? And we will see how we can ingest that data super easily into Lakehouse, right? In that case, we're gonna import the file geolocation.csv. Then we will do another shortcut to an Azure storage account in where we have the customer.csv file, right? And then we will set up mirroring at the top of SQL Server 2025, and we will replicate, synchronize our tables, orders, and orders items directly into our mirror database in Fabric, and then we will ingest the data into our main Lakehouse. That will be the ingestion part. Then Gaston will take over and will show us how we're going to do the transformation using Dataflows Gen2 and Notebook, right? To finally, model our data, right? Do the cleaning, just remove duplicate. Well, he will be able to explain much better than myself, right? And he will create the semantic model that at the end will be our Power BI output, right? So Gaston, what do you think? Are you ready to start?
Yeah, this is amazing, and you double down on one really great aspect, that is Microsoft with this unified platform is trying to bring the sense of, hey, doesn't matter if you are only in Microsoft Cloud, if you are on premises, if you are bringing data from Amazon S3 or other clouds, as Javier explained before, for anyone showing us, you can bring the data from different data sources. And one specific really thing that resonated with me a lot is shortcuts are reference the data without doing the data movement. So when Javier is talking about the product, the seller CSV file back there in Amazon S3, he's going to be pointing to a reference to that data, but he's not moving the data itself. So this is really meaningful across this space.
Good. So remember this slide, because this is what we're going to build from this moment on, right? Okay, so we're going to start with an empty workspace in Fabric that we call Fabcom Vienna, right? The first thing we will create is a Lakehouse, right? The super easy. We're going to go there, create new item. We have to specify the name, and then we create in few seconds our Lakehouse. Remember, in the Lakehouse, we're going to be able to store our relational, structure, semi-structured data, everything. So tables, files, etc. Right? So as you can see, Fabric is adjusting the interface for us to start working with that. So we're going to create our first shortcut. So we're going to do the new shortcut. Then we go to Amazon S3. We can create the connection string. So we have to specify all the connectivity information, the URL, the API, the access key, the secret, etc. In my case, I have it already created. This is an external Amazon S3, so we can enable cache, right? Just to save data on moving when we have to, and then we select the folder, right? That is, again, is still in Amazon S3. And what's going to happen next is that we can do eventually transformation of this data, right? In this case, we will just create the shortcut. And what we see now is under my files folder, we have the Fabcom Vienna subfolder that if we expand it, we will see a list of files. Those files are physically located in Amazon S3. So what we're going to do next is load that table, the product CSV, into our Lakehouse, right? So then we can do our analytics. So as you should see, right-click, load to new tables, and in a matter of seconds, we will have that CSV file again, which is still sitting in Amazon S3 as a CSV. We can see it there, but right, load to new table, we import product and we import sellers, right? We specified that the columns headers and the separator is a comma. Then we put the naming convention, TBL underscore, and our table name. And then we see products. And if we refresh, we're also going to see sellers, right? So the first part is already done. Now as a table living and sitting within OneLake, right? So again, we just complete the first part with an Amazon S3 shortcut. Now we will create a pipeline to connect to Azure SQL DB. So we go again, next, create pipeline, we just specify the name. And the beauty of this is that the interface is adjusting automatically to start working on our pipeline, right? That is why we said end-to-end. You don't need to do anything else. So you have there, now the interface is ready for you to start doing the copy data assistant. This is a simple ETL. We're going to connect to the source, eventually do some transformation, and then load it into our system. As you can see here, we have multiple sources. We're going to select Azure SQL DB. We have to specify the connection string, right? In this case, we have the Azure SQL DB connected in Management Studio on an external machine. We're going to get the server name and the database name, and of course, the logins, right? So here we have the server name. Then we're going to specify the database name, right? My demo DB, right? And then I go back here to Fabric, to my pipeline, and we specify the database name. Then, of course, the credentials, and when we are ready to do. We do the connectivity, and what we will see now is the possibility of selecting one table or multiple tables, or write a T-SQL query, right, that will join eventually multiple tables and get a result set, and that's what we're going to insert into OneLake, right? What we're going to do here, as we said before, we're going to connect to my demo DB, and we will go through the dbo.payment table. This table is physically in Azure SQL DB and is doing the preview, so we see the first few rows, right? And now we have to choose the destination. The destination is the layout that we just created. We can, create it to a new table. We specify the table name. We see the source and the destination. We can change the column name. We can change the data type, etc. And when we're ready, we save and run. What is save and run? Well, we have the pipeline created as an artifact within Fabric, right? So now, it's saving, and after saving, it will queue it and finally execute it, right? What's going to happen when we execute it, and if we execute it successfully, we're going to have the data that is sitting on the dbo.payment table in Azure SQL DB, but within our Lakehouse in Fabric, right? Now, as we see, it's in progress, and in few seconds, right, it just succeeds. So now we go back to the Lakehouse, right, and we will see that now we have the data here. We're going to refresh one more time, and we see that payment is there, right? So now we go to my local machine, and I will do an upload from my C drive, right? I go to my C drive, I'll go to the folder temp. Over there, I have multiple files, and I'm going to get the geolocation.csv, right? That will upload the file physically from my local computer into the files area of my Lakehouse. We can, view it there if we want, and then we will do the same. Load to new table. We specify the naming convention. We include the header. We have the separator, and finally, after a few seconds, we will see the geolocation information saved into our table. Now we're going to connect to an Azure Blob Storage. This is the storage system for Microsoft. And similar to Amazon S3, we're going to create a new connection or use an existing one. We have to specify the endpoint, the key, the credential, and what's going to happen next is that we're going to have the list of all the containers within that storage account. We will select one specifically here, data 002, and what we will see next are all the files within that container, customer CSV, and there is also a .parquet file, right? Then we hit create, and now we will have the shortcut in Fabric. Again, the files are still located in Azure Storage Account. We're going to load to new table, right? One more time, customers, we change the name, TBL_customer. We specify all we need, and then we hit load, and now we have the customer information within our Lakehouse. As you can see, this is quite simple, quite fast, nothing, too difficult, right? It's connecting to multiple sources and get the data using different techniques, right? On-premise, on different clouds, on an Azure SQL DB, everything, right? So you name it. So now we can see that we have the data physically sitting in there, right? What we're going to do next is create the mirroring connection with our SQL Server 2025. So we go to create, we hit mirror, we will select mirror SQL Server, and now is where the magic starts. We're going to connect to SQL Server 2025. We specify all the connectivity information. In this case, we are using an on-premise data gateway, right, which is this component that will help us to connect to systems that are sitting on-premise, right? We specify the server name, the database name. As before, we have to specify the login and password. Like in this case, I'm using, SQL authentication to connect, right? And again, what we're going to see next is a list of all the databases, all the tables under the database that we just connect, right? This is a SQL server that is sitting on premise, right? And we just make the relationship between Fabric using mirroring and the SQL Server 2025, right? What's going to happen next is similar to what we saw before for the pipeline. We see all the tables. We can select one, all, or just a few, the ones we want, right? And the big difference between this and the pipeline is the pipeline will generate a snapshot. So one time only until we execute again the pipeline, right? In this case, if we keep adding data into orders or order details tables, that data will continually flowing into OneLake, right? So now it's provisioning the mirror database, doing the connectivity, right? And doing the initial setup that will take an initial snapshot and then start moving the data. We have this monitoring area in where we see that we already have the tables created in OneLake, so we keep hitting refresh, right, to see what we have. So now we see that the initial snapshot is created for the orders table, and now soon we're going to have it for the orders items table, right? And we're going to have all the data available. So this is the same amount of data that we have in SQL. So if we go to SQL and we delete everything, in few minutes, that data will be deleted as well. So now finally, we have to create a new shortcut to the mirror database that we have in OneLake, right? The one that we just created. And then we bring the orders and the orders items tables into OneLake. That's what we are doing in this step, right? So we select our two tables from here, orders items, orders, and then we just hit next, and we have then available. We're gonna exclude here DBO because it's not even a table, it's the schema. And we're gonna rename the tables just using our naming convention. Right? We can do anything we want here. Right? Doing edit. When we're ready, we just hit create, and you will see that now we have those two tables landed within our Lakehouse, right? So all the tables that we saw in that initial picture that we were ingesting from, right? We have it there. Remember, we started from an empty workspace, right? So another thing that we can do here is, if we feel more comfortable using SQL, we switch to SQL endpoint, right? And now we can start working with our tables using T-SQL. So I hit new query here. I'm using Transact SQL, and I will do a select from the tables that we just insert from orders and orders items. And we're going to see that the data that we had in SQL is actually now in Fabric. And, this is going to be the source for what Gaston will be doing next, right? To do the cleansing of the data, and then build the semantic models and the Power BI report, right? Finally, here I'm just doing a count just to make sure that the numbers matches with what we saw before in the mirroring dashboard, right? We have the same number. So if we go to SQL and we keep adding the new rows or deleting rows, in near real time, we will see that information reflected in here, right? What do you think, Gaston? Are you ready to take ownership of all this and start building your semantic model with this?
Yeah, this is amazing, Javier, and something that I double down all the time and explaining to people, that as Javier mentioned at the beginning, Fabric is a whole unified data platform. That means that multiple roles are coming together into the Fabric stream. So as Javier mentioned before, He brings a whole perspective from a data architect side of things, data engineer side of things. He was taking care of landing data and ingesting data from different sources, all coming together. And you can see that pretty much what Javier was doing and trying to explain here is there's so many ways to achieve this. And I'm going to be trying to do exactly the same. So what I'm trying to say here is sometimes Javier switch and say, hey, let's do a shortcut between this data source. And that's pretty meaningful based on that business use case. Then he chime in and say, hey, maybe for this other table, I need more OneLake and just land data from my C drive. But then after that, he was thinking maybe, hey, I have a whole transactional layer. I have a whole transactional system that lives in my SQL 2025. And I would love to, for this specific use case, I would love to see real-time data coming into Fabric Stream. And that's how Javier decided, hey, let's do this with mirroring because I need this live transaction every time a new order is coming into my SQL 2025. I would love to see that right away in my Fabric Lakehouse. And that's pretty meaningful in the understanding of the platform. That is, sometimes you're going to be dealing with multiple sources and you're going to be having multiple options. So the tricky here is how I can achieve this in different ways and how I can perform this in different options. But what is the best way for me to achieve this based on my business use case? And it's going to happen the same in my case. For example, you can see my screen now that I have open, and I've been joking with Javier around, should I be doing this live or should I be doing this recording? I'm going to record sometime, but now I prefer to go live. So in this case, this is kind of an environment of Fabric. And Javier was checking on the different items. You have Lakehouse here, you have the SQL endpoint for the Lakehouse, you have a semantic model, you have a data flow, you have notebooks, and so on. So what I'm going to say is, first of all, Javier reinforced the message of I have multiple tables, I have files, I have unstructured data, I have also structured data. I can switch back from this view from a Lakehouse perspective to SQL Analytics endpoint perspective, but at the same time, I can see maybe that the data is not coming clean, or I need to mash up the data based on my business needs. And to mash up the data, again, multiple options. And main question that I got time to time from clients and from communities is, should I go and do this with a notebook? That is this case, this screen, where I'm mashing up the data using, in this case, PySpark to import some functions and doing some loading of some of the tables from the Lakehouse. Then I standardize and clean some of the data, normalize, for example, zip codes. Then I'm doing some deduplication of the data, deduplication of customers in this case, enrich some of the customer with some zip codes as well. And I'm doing this all with PySpark. I'm doing some cleaning of the data, transformation of the data, adding some rich data on top of the data that I already have in my Lakehouse. And at the end of the day, at the end of this notebook, once I run all the cells, I am saving this directly to my Lakehouse again. I am writing back to the Lakehouse after I do the whole transformation with notebooks. But one of the main questions that I got time to time is, hey, Gaston, why you decide to do this in notebooks and cleansing and doing the deduplication or adding zip code or normalize instead of going to this way? And this is the other item in the Fabric family. And this is a Dataflows Gen2. And I'm doing kind of the same. I'm doing the source, I'm connecting to the Lakehouse first, then I'm doing some navigation. And of course, you can do this with all this design give methodology when you have all kind of transformation where you can replace values, we can change data types, you can rename columns, you can pivot and pivot columns, you can convert this to a list, and so on. So what is the main difference between one and the other? It's just about options. So if you're dealing with data engineer team that is working on a raw data, let's say multiple bronze layers coming from multiple data source systems, and you need to go ahead and do the mashup and first transformation in your bronze layer, perhaps in the bronze layer, I'm going to be choosing notebooks to make that happen because could be performant in terms of getting all the data sources from a raw standpoint and then moving that from bronze to silver layer. But then maybe in this case, in this scenario, I already have my goal layer in my medallion architecture. And then I'm facing another kind of role or persona. I'm facing more a business user, a strong Power BI champion, let's say. And that person is telling me, hey, Gaston, I just need to do a little bit of mashup. I need to change some of the data types. I need to add a new column that is the volume column to the goal layer. I need to add another column that is a dimension column, doing some calculations, understanding the business logic, and then I'm going to add another column that is a size. And that takes me just 3, 4, 5, 7 different steps. But it's something that I can do right away with the Git design here, all graphic interaction, or of course, I can go here and do right-click, advanced editor, and you can see that I can write the code. I can write a Power Query code. I can even go ahead and ask Copilot in my Power Query experience and say, hey, Copilot, I would love to mash up the data and add in a dimension column, add in a volume column, add in a size column, and explain in natural language what I would love to do with my data source here. And I can bring that up to Copilot and take that experience. The same happens with notebooks. Let's say that I'm coming from a DBA perspective, and I don't be involved in Python scripting for quite some time, or I am just a beginner in the Python side of things. I have my Copilot experience in the notebooks where I can go and say, hey, this is the transformation that I need from the raw data. So that experience on leveraging Copilot lives in the notebook experience, lives here as well in Dataflows, thinking about this as two different personas coming into Fabric. One is more a data engineer mindset, and that is going directly to notebooks. And this is more a business Power BI champions or Power BI advanced user coming to Dataflows and say, hey, yes, the data engineer team did a really great job in bronze, silver, gold layer. I need to go farther on that line. I need to do some transformation farther on the line, and that's where I'm coming with Dataflows Gen2. I am mashing up the data, adding some columns, changing some data types. And then, of course, after I do all of this, the next steps is based on the data that I already have in my Lakehouse. We can see the Lakehouse here. You can create a semantic model right away from the Lakehouse. So after you load all the data, and I repeat what Javier mentioned before, remember the end-to-end solution. We are bringing data from multiple sources, shortcuts from a C drive, from SQL 2025 via mirroring. We are doing Azure VM, and all of them, they're coming together into one bucket that is OneLake. Everything is Delta bucket. After that, we are transforming data. Your choice, based on our needs. Notebooks, data flows, of course, shouldn't be one versus the other. You can orchestrate everything in a pipeline. That's another beautiful around the platform. You can create your pipeline. You can, from the pipeline, call a notebook, then call in a data flow, and you can run the pipeline end-to-end to do all the transformation. After you end up the process, you come here and say, hey, I would love to create a new semantic model, bringing all the tables together. What is going to look like that? Something like this. Something like this where you say, hey, I am bringing payments, order products, order items, customers. They are coming all to the same page. One of the questions that I got all time to time is, why, Gaston, you see that blue line on top of each table? what means that blue line, what means if you don't see the blue line, what means if you see only one single line that is totally filled. That is the storage mode. And you can see there that there's a one line there in the storage mode that is saying direct lake. And this is a huge, feature coming to the Fabric family. That is, I don't need to refresh my Lakehouse data. Every time Javier keep landing more data in the order or order items coming from mirroring, what is going to happen is my semantic model is going to be automatically refreshed with the latest data coming to the Lakehouse. My semantic model is already connected to the Lakehouse. That means that this semantic model leaves link right away with the Lakehouse data. And that means that if I develop the right relationships between, and you can see all the lines here, between order items, between sellers, between geolocation, every is interconnect. This kind of relationship, remember that you need to spend some.
Well, I think we lost temporarily Gaston. What he was mentioning here is basically that easily we create the semantic model, right? And now our job is basically create the relations, right? We have to specify the relationship between all the tables that we have created in order to finalize our star schema and with that continue to the next step. Gaston, we have you back.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. So yes, in the semantic model, what you can see here is the art of possible here is working, of course, in the relationships, working on your primary keys, foreign key, connect all your tables, get enough time to work on your semantic model in the meaning of create all the measures, understanding the business logic, understanding what are those measures that you need to put in place to create a meaningful report in top of your semantic models. And of course, when you're ready to go, you can go to file in your semantic model and you can create a new report here. In my case, I already have an orders report that is showing everything that is coming to one single pane. Of course, we have Copilot, and we can ask Copilot, hey, can you read the semantic model and create a new page or a new overview or a new executive summary for me? So, and that depends, sometimes one of the analogies that I love to bring here is, remember that one of the analogy in the data space is, remember that garbage in, garbage out. So remember that one of the meaningful things is work across all the streams, cleansing, transforming the data, understanding your business needs until you get that sense of, hey, this is meaningful for my business. This semantic model is going to be making better decisions for all of us. And once you have that semantic model, you can go here to semantic model and say, hey, I would love to bring Copilot, and you have this button over here in the top right, where you can see Copilot there, and you can say, hey, I would love for Copilot to suggest, to create a new report or a new page from scratch based on the data that I already have in my semantic model. You can see all the suggestions from Copilot. Of course, you can use one of the suggestions, or you can go and say, hey, I don't want this suggestion. I would love to prompt against my semantic model and come with something new out of this semantic model. So everything depends in terms of the art of possible. Everything depends on how much time you work on your semantic model to have meaningful charts, meaningful experience, and meaningful decisions that you are going to be making out of your semantic model. But again, one of the key elements here is how we land the data from different streams into the Fabric space. And Javier talked briefly about all of the art possible between shortcuts, mirroring, OneLake storage, and so on. So remember that everything is interconnected. You don't need to deal with everything by yourself. This is a teamwork. So remember all the roles that we discussed, bringing all together to Microsoft Fabric. So that is pretty much the meaning of the platform and how you can intersect between different roles and personas working in an end-to-end solution in the data platform space. What do you think, Javier? I think we achieved the main goal for us, that was explaining how to bring really a blueprint of integration coming into Microsoft Fabric.
Yes, I mean, we have started from white sheet, and we have created a data analytics project from multiple sources, cleaning the data, going through, Dataflows Gen2 notebook, creating the semantic model, and finally doing the Power BI report. The part that I like the most, Gaston, that I always wanted to ask you is that, are you a Spark expert? I mean, have you create that notebook just by yourself, or what?
I love to bring the energy of Copilot to make that happen, because I am kind of old school. I love T-SQL. I've been doing T-SQL for quite some time. I love Power Query, and that is my advice. If you are not familiar with Python scripting or PySpark or that kind of a data engineer, kind of a new wave mindset, of course, you can shape it up, but you can also go with Copilot and having that experience of, hey, what I need to know to shape the data in this way. So if you have that in mind and you have the goal of what is going to look like your data coming to the right, transformation layer, then you can go and ask Copilot, and you can start experiment with Copilot until you find that right way to mash up and create those cells to transform your data.
Yeah, this is what I love from Fabric and Copilot. On every single part of the journey, you are able to leverage Copilot and write code, T-SQL, PySpark, as you just showed us, generate visuals, right? So super, super helpful. So, all right, Gaston, we just finished our journey. We made it on time. So I saw a lot of engagement in the chat, a lot of good questions. Not sure if there are any questions for us, but I saw our moderators today answering a lot of the question from the audience. So thank you so much. And well, I believe that we will see each other next time. One more time, I will remind you that, go to the link aka.ms /database. So stay tuned with all these events. So Gaston, a pleasure like always to be here today presenting with you, our moderators, our all the people at the backstage. Thank you so much, and we see each other next time. Thank you so much.
See you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Javier. Thank you, Gaston, for today's session. And thank you guys for joining us today. I see that we had a bit of a global audience, which is exactly what we want to see here at the Reactor. Thank you so much also to our moderators. I see that you guys were very active in the chat. As always, if you could give us a couple minutes of your time, I have placed a QR code right here on the screen. We would highly appreciate your feedback about today's session. As always, we create these sessions for you. So any feedback you might have, if you have any positive comments, anything we might be able to take from today's session, we will highly appreciate it. I have also left a link in the chat if you are unable to scan the QR code, and I will drop it again right here. But with that being said, thank you everyone for joining us today, and we hope to see you again right here on the Microsoft Reactor. Have a wonderful rest of your day.